I was born March 21st, 1917. From the time I was 10 years old, when Lindbergh flew the ocean, I wanted to fly more than anything else. And I read books and I built model airplanes and from Harlan airports. Finally, in 1940, the Army relaxed. You didn't need college. You just took an exam. So August 20th, 1941, I went to pilot school in Tulare, California, in the San Joaquin Valley, due east of Fresno. And I was in seventh heaven. I was flying every other day. I was in California. They were paying me for it. And I did fairly well. And I soloed early, but something was deficient. And after 10 weeks, I washed out. I could fly single engine up to about 200 horsepower, but I couldn't go any further. So I washed out. Came home, Pearl Harbor, March 42, I re-enlisted for navigation school. Graduated as second lieutenant navigator, December 26, 42. Was assigned as a navigator on a 10-man crew, B-17. We practiced this and that, bombing and formation. And April 43, we had orders overseas. We went up to Mitchell Field, Long Island, Presque Isle, Maine, Goose Bay, Labrador, Greenland, Iceland, Scotland, England, joined the 92nd Bomb Group flying missions over Germany. August the 12th, 43, we were bombing in Nauru, a town called Gelsenkirchen, and we got very bad hit from flak. And the back of the ship was torn up. The men back there were injured. The pilot put the ship in a dive, and the two waist gunners thought we were crashing. They jumped. The ball turret man saw them go. He puts his chute out and jumps. And either the radio operator or the tail gunner jumped. The rest of us stayed with the airplane down to the deck. And now we're flying home at about 100 feet. We've got two ME-109. I do this when I'm on a phone, too. They were flying about 100 feet above the ground. It's hard for anybody to shoot at you. And we've got two ME-109 pilots, one on each side. They were so close, I could see the helmet on this pilot's head. And they're motioning down, and we had machine guns trained on them. We flew long enough to become bosom buddies. No one either shot at either one of us. Finally, the pilot says, "How long back to England?" I said, he said, "We don't have any gas." We picked a nice level spot, actually on a bicycle path in Holland, and we did a good crash landing, and the six of us got out of the airplane, had to leave the one man there because he was going at the shock from his wound. I told the other four, Spain is that way, due south, start walking. And, well, if we stay with the airplane, the Germans are going to be there in 5 minutes. We were lucky. We got it to woods right away, and we split up into two groups, 3 and 2, and we walked all that day. And at just about early, we had shot down at 9:30 in the morning. Early evening, we're resting in a little grove of trees, and a man comes, just like a movie, man comes up with a bike, washing a bicycle. "I'll help you." And he was with the Dutch Underground. At this time, there were more and more, there weren't many groups when I went over there, but there were more and more groups coming over, so there were more and more airmen being shot down. So this was a way that they could get these downed airmen back to England through neutral country Spain. We walked with him to his house, slept on the floor there overnight, and he gave us civilian clothes. I do not have any idea to this day what color my pants were. I got a pair of beat-up Dutch black shoes, replaced my nice boots. But I'll never forget this shirt. The women will know it was a tone-on-tone pink shirt. Shiny tab collar. I wore it for 33 days. It wasn't too hot. But anyway, the next morning we started south. That day we stopped at a farmhouse, and a farmer, his wife, and 2 children, maybe 8 and 10. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. His wife would wake up screaming, and he would, to get us out, because they would be tortured. He said, "I can't kill Germans, but I can do this." And way it worked, we would stay in a safe house, much like in what's her name? Anne Frank. We were not in the room. We were outside of the room, under the roof, but in a fitting wall. And then a courier or guide would come every so often and move us to the next safe house. One came and took our pilot ahead of us, and about a week later, he took a navigator, a co-pilot, and me, and we stayed at another safe house the next night, farther south. The next day, we were going to go into Belgium, and now we find out that the pilot had made it to France and was captured. The gunners were captured in Belgium, so the next safe house is not safe. Plus, it's September now. It's getting cold in the Pyrenees. So we take a 2-day train ride back up to The Hague. We got out and a trolley car out to the suburb, and when we would walk, the lead man would walk about 150 feet ahead. So if he would stop, the rest of them could duck into an alley and I was lead. I walked up the porch on this safe house, just touched the doorknob, and instantaneously the door was open. I was in, the door was shut. A man in a black uniform clubbed me over the head, had a skull insignia on his hat. He was a Schutzstaffel. Another man's got a gag in my mouth. The third one got me handcuffed. Fourth man pushed me down. Co-pilot got the same treatment a minute later. They rushed us into 2 cars, 2 armed guards, and a driver in each one. They were Gestapo and Schutzstaffel. You've seen movies on it. I was ushered into this big building. Second Lieutenant Robert Doolan, United States Army Air Corps, 0795218. And they took my shoes away, took my belt. I had a metal rosary. They took that, took my watch. And we started getting questioned. And the first questioning, there was this room about 15 feet square, big picture of Hitler on the wall, and a man with a gun right at my back. The door opens, and this man come in. It was Hollywood. I mean, he looked like he had just had these creases pressed. His shoes, you could use them as a mirror. And he brushes past me. Heil Hitler to the picture. And he turns around. Lieutenant Doolan, is this the new American Air Corps uniform? And we went around like that for 2 hours. He did not ask me a single military question. All he wanted to know was who helped me and where were we. I couldn't tell him. The first night, I want to tell this, the first night, I heard someone whistling Bob Hope's theme song. And all of a sudden, you could hear talking out in the corridor. And I found out that we were the only 2 people in these cells, all that were not Dutch Jews. They were all families on their way to Belsenbergen to be killed. And this Bob Hope was a signal that the guard was gone from the corridor. You could yell from one cell to the other. We stayed there. That was September 2nd, we were captured. We stayed there till the 18th. And you question, they turned us over to the Luftwaffe. Thank God, Goering was an idiot, but they did run a good prison camp. They lived up to the Geneva Convention. We didn't get any more food, but we had much more respect. There was still a little, all from World War I, a little, the Red Cross, I can't begin to tell you, you can't imagine the magnitude. When I was prisoner number 2555 at that time, September 43. By the time we left there, January 45, there were 10,000 of us. Can you imagine 10,000 slices of bread? The Red Cross, the German food, we would not have died, but we would have lost a lot of weight. With the Red Cross food, I only lost about 30 pounds, which is not, and that was August the 2nd, September, October, then December, June, the invasion, then crossing the Rhine. We know what's going on. We have the German radio, we have German newspapers, and we have a secret radio. We could get BBC. If I talk to anyone who's a prisoner of Japan, did I say that already? A prisoner who was of Japan, Korea, or Vietnam, they'd say you were in a country club. And for 9 months, we actually had almost enough food. It was cold and hungry, but we had a chapel, we had a chaplain, we had a library, we had the YMCA sent us books, they sent us baseball, soccer balls, footballs. We cleared a field. There was a little pool or pond, brick lined, about 20 feet square, 3 feet water in case they had a fire. They could hose the water out of there. We would sit around there and sunbathe. If we wrote a letter home and it said we're hungry or cold, they'd either X that out or not mail it home. So we sat in the sunbathe today by the pool. We played baseball. We learned how to cook. The German food, very seldom any meat. Blood sausage, once in a while a little meat. And one time there was a big canister come in with a whole cow's head in it. But the mainstay was an earthen vegetable, either kohlrabi or turnip, and it's nothing you could do made it palatable. We got we got margarine, and we had margarine in a Red Cross parcel. Didn't have anything to fry, but we had plenty of margarine. The Red Cross parcel was designed to be food for one man for 7 days, and it would have done it. There was 20 ounces of corned beef, 20 ounces of spam, pound of powdered milk, sugar, butter, sometimes a little meat paste, crackers, and 5 packages of American cigarettes. Cigarettes are currency to this day. Any American cigarette, no other one in the whole world. I didn't see an American flag for 20 months, but we were there until January 45. Things were getting worse. By that time, we had 10,000 men there. The Russians now have broken out of Stalingrad. They're rushing west through Poland. And they're 70 miles away, and the Germans, we've got rumors. What are they going to do? One rumor was not a rumor. Hitler ordered all the Luft gangsters murdered, killed, not murdered. They didn't say, he said killed. Secondly, the Germans are going to just leave us to the Russians, which we didn't want that either. And the third was that we're going to march you out of there. We got 10,000 men. It's 8 degrees Fahrenheit. There's 6 inches of snow on the ground. We're thinking, my God, 26th of January, you have to be ready to move in 2 hours. By this time, I had 2 pair of pants. My sister had sent me a pair. You tie the bottom together, put a piece of rope through here, you got a backpack. The Red Cross had brought us all GI blankets. They had brought me GI shoes. You could put the blanket in there, put food in there, your personal things. The YMCA had given some of us a bound notebook, scrapbook, and we had so much good stuff there. I had watercolor paints. I did some paint and some pencil sketches. I wrote a history in there, and I cut out salient articles from the German newspaper. I wasn't about to leave it there, so I carried it in here. And when I got back, it was curved. I don't know how I had a belly, but I had it rebound. But sure enough, there were 5 compounds here. Oh, I missed the most important part. If you ever see a movie advertised on television, The Great Escape, or rent it, it's a true movie. It's a wonderful movie in itself, but it's an exactly true movie. Everything in there is true. I knew those people. This was our camp. The British, they were at this hundreds of years before we were, war and tunneling. They devised a tunnel. They were going to get 200 men out. Some of them they had made converted uniforms into civilian clothes. They had a man could fake a German pass, and they were going to get out of this tunnel 300 feet long, 8 to 20 feet deep, and it came up about 20 feet short of the woods outside. So the first man through the tunnel on March 24th, 43. He sticks his head up. He's right in the middle of a path right outside the fence where the German would walk up and down. So they devised a scheme. The first man took a rope across the path into the woods, and when it was the next man up the tunnel would see, he would jerk it if it's free, and then they would go by. When the guard was coming, they'd signal, don't work. Got 76 men out. Only 3 made it to freedom. Actually, no one really was intended or hoped that they would get back to the Allies. It was just too far. We're 90 miles east of Berlin. But the first 3 men did. The first man actually got to the railroad station before the tunnel was discovered. So he got on a train, went to Holland. The next 2 were Norwegian pilots. If you had lived on the continent and could speak a couple of languages, the only time you had a chance was. So they had German money, French, and maps and fake identity passes. 3 of them made it back to safety. The other 73 were captured. Hitler said, kill them all. And the Gestapo caught every one of them, and they were bringing them back in several different trucks. And some of them, they said, oh, it's a rest stop. You go out and urinate. They got out, and they machine gunned them. They killed 50. And we built a monument there at the camp for those 50. That was March 44. Back to the march, we left at, I know I'm going over time here. We left at 2 o'clock in the morning on the 28th of January, and we walked 16 miles. No food, no water. Snow does not quench your thirst. But we had a fantastic senior officer there, Colonel Spivey. Loved the man. He said, well, they came up to him and they said, we have a railroad car for you, Colonel, and your staff. And he said, how many cars do you have? He said, 1 for you and your staff. And Delmar Spivey said, if my men walk, I walk. But he did insist that we would walk 50 minutes out of the hour and rest 10. The next morning we got there at 2 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, in the afternoon. I mean, we finally got a Lutheran church, and we put 100 men in it. There's no pews. We're all just nestled together. It wasn't heated, but it was dry. The next day we walked another 12 or 14 miles, stayed in a farm, and the next day we came to a pottery factory. They were making these red pottery drain spouts. The kilns were working. It was hot. They had hot water. You could make coffee. We walked another 2 days. Finally, came to a town called Spremberg, and we got on trains. World War I French boxcars, 50 men in a car, and we were on that train for 4 days, and they would stop the train every once in a while, and 200 men would get out. And there's only one way to say it. They'd stoop down bare ass and relieve themselves. Civilians would stand there watching, but imagine a Brussels sprout prop the next day was great. But they bring the guard and the dogs out to make sure. We finally got down to Munich and went north of Munich to a town called Moosburg. This was a camp now not run by the Luftwaffe. This was run by the Gestapo. And this is where the Red Cross, you won't believe how it operated. When I got there, there were probably 30,000 prisoners. When we left there in January, there were 100,000 prisoners. Imagine 100,000, anything. Now, the Russians and the Poles, whatever, didn't get much Red Cross food. They had not signed the Geneva Convention. But anyway, we were there, and December, we got there while the balls were still on, December 16th, 41 to January 21st, 44 to 45. The food was, there wasn't much. But the main thing is the restrooms. Imagine 100,000 men. Eventually, the outhouses, there was urine and excrement, even where we were supposed to stand to be counted twice a day. Eventually, our senior officer, Colonel Goodrich at that time, said, they don't count us today unless it gets violent. And we came to a climax. They brought the dogs and the machine guns out, and finally it subsided. And so they solved the problem by digging great big slit trenches. And it's not a good solution, but it works. April 29th. Now we know what's going on. I said we had the radio and the newspapers. Patton is coming now. April 29th, 11:30 in the morning. Tanks break through the barbed wire, and the 3rd Army, 99th Infantry, 14th Armored, and we had fellas bent down, kissed the ground. We hadn't seen an American flag in years, and Patton came in the next day himself. He wore riding breeches, ivory-handled pistol, shiny helmet, and he said, "I know you want me to get you out of here, but I have more Germans to kill." He got his voice isn't much. He said to a prisoner, he says, "Climb up that building there and tear that German flag down. And when you get down here, wipe your ass with it." He was larger than life. But that was April 29th. We stayed there till May the 8th, PE Day. And Eisenhower sent a three 6x6 trucks in, loaded us up. We drove about 30 miles to an old German air base on the Danube River. But in C-47s, if you were in the military, it's a beautiful airplane. It was a 1930s tourist airliner, still used today. It's just a lovable airplane. You take off and the wings start flying before you do. And if it's empty, it doesn't want to land. And they flew during World War II. They towed glider with it. They towed 2 gliders. They had parachute, jump it. We flew to Le Havre, France. And I think that's about it. I could go on, but we got a shower, and the first thing they did was give us a physical to see if we had a venereal disease. And, Oh, one more thing. This prisoner of the Far East won't believe it. We had a theater there, and we could put on plays. And we were putting on a play. We had one soldier dressed like a woman, and we saw a purge of new prisoners coming in from the forelager, and we had one man dressed like a woman trying to jump out of this barracks. It was a theater, pull him back in. We know what's going to happen sooner that afternoon. I saw a woman in there. I said, "Geez, you've been shot down a week and you're around the bend already?" But the Red Cross, they were bringing these food parcels in. They brought us our clothes. You read the Bible, Job, naked I came into the world. That's the way I entered the prison camp. I had to give up all my civilian clothes. They gave me GI clothes, GI blanket, and food. As you can imagine, there's 100,000 men. Now, we didn't get Red Cross food every week, but I'm going to give this to people here. This is a list of what was in the Red Cross. We had British Red Cross, American Red Cross, Canadian Red Cross. The British Red Cross, of course, had tea. The American Red Cross had powdered coffee. But the British, amazingly enough, when we were out of Red Cross parcels, it was pretty slim. We didn't have any on October 44, and a shipment of 100,000 packages came in, whatever. So we said, we usually rationed it. We're going to bash for Christmas. We're not going to eat 3 ounces of corned beef. We'll eat 5 ounces. The British Red Cross had a Christmas pudding in it. I'm not making that up. There were a lot of little things like that. We didn't see an American flag for 20 months, but later on as a civilian, I was a scoutmaster for 33 years, and Tony Sanzalone here was one of my Boy Scouts. How old are you?
57 years old.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Excuse me for not getting up.
No, you did great. If you didn't catch that, Bob is about to turn 100, so